Maybe it'd help if you understood better just how air affects a landing airplane. In other words, let's bone up on basic aerodynamics. It's important that you know how an airplane flies. Many accidents are caused by lack of understanding basic aerodynamics. That's why we have ground school, to get pilots to understand the fundamentals of aerodynamics and make our flight training hours more effective. It's all concerned with answering the question, how do airplanes fly? From a pilot's viewpoint, the aerodynamics we need to know is relatively simple. It's enough to know that this whole field of physics called aerodynamics is largely concerned with the motions of air and other forces, and how these forces relate to the mechanics of flying. We don't need to get involved with the mathematical formulas with which aircraft designers deal. But if you asked an aeronautical engineer to answer our question of how an airplane flies, he'd say quite properly that, very simply put, it's primarily because lift equals the coefficient of lift times 1/2 rho, the atmospheric density factor times the velocity in feet per second squared times the total wing area in square feet. Of course, you don't have to be a graduate aerodynamicist to fly, but you do need to know some of the principles of flight theory which will apply to any aircraft you fly. It's much the same thing as knowing what a road is and how a car is operated in order to become an accomplished driver. But unlike a road, the motion of air is hard to visualize. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why aerodynamics seems difficult at first. Air, of course, is simply a mixture of gases. We live at the lower layer of the atmosphere. This not only makes it possible for us to breathe, but it is also the air that enables us to fly. All we really need to know about air right now is that it has substance, that it is denser near the Earth and gets thinner at higher altitudes. Thus, it exerts force when it moves. And as far as air being invisible, the aerodynamicists have come up with a way for us to see it in a smoke tunnel. It's done by drawing streams of smoke into the air. If we can see the air, then perhaps it will help us answer our beginning question: how do airplanes fly? We'll start with a double-winged model in the airflow. The action of the air between the wings will demonstrate a basic principle of aerodynamics. Now, by animation, let's study the airflow in greater detail. First, note that its pattern suggests it is passing through a tube-shaped device. Next, notice that the entrance and exit of the device are the same size. We can measure the openings and find that the ends are each 10 square inches. The middle part is squeezed, creating a throat of 5 square inches. Now, if we direct smoke lines through the device, its pattern will show that something happens to the air where it goes through the narrowed part. What we find is that when the airspeed is 100 miles an hour at the entrance of the device, it is also 100 miles an hour at the exit. Yet at the same time, the speed at the narrow part is considerably higher. It can easily be understood, therefore, that the air increases in speed as it passes through the smaller opening. But the interesting thing is that in order for the air to go at the faster speed through the narrow part, something has to balance this change in velocity, this speed difference. What changes is the air pressure in the narrow part. This pressure is significantly lower than the pressure at either end. But what does this have to do with flying? If we cut the model in half, we would have a profile similar to an aircraft wing section, called an airfoil. You can see how helpful it would be to lower the pressure over a wing. Why? So that the comparatively higher pressure under the wing would push or lift it into the area of lower pressure above the wing. That's part of how an airplane flies.